Welcome in, everyone. Today we're doing something a little different. We're diving deep into Prince Harry's autobiography, Spare.
Okay.
Now, I know this might seem a little off our usual path, but trust me on this one. The book, it really digs into some universal themes.
Right.
Family, grief, identity, that search for purpose. We all grapple with these things.
Oh, absolutely. And autobiographies, I think they offer such a unique perspective. You get these raw, unfiltered insights.
Yeah.
Often challenging the conventional narratives we might have.
Yeah, for sure. And Harry's story, well, it's extraordinary.
Right.
The setting, his life. But it's those universal themes that really come through.
Yeah.
Like when he talks about Balmoral Castle.
Okay.
He describes the Scottish Highlands, this idyllic royal retreat.
Right.
But for him, it's forever tied to loss.
Right. And that's where the story gets really interesting because, he describes Balmoral and it's clear it's not just a place for him. It's a vessel for all these complicated emotions.
Yeah.
The beauty of it, juxtaposed with the grief that he felt there when he learned about his mother's death.
It's palpable, that grief. Oh. Especially when he talks about that final phone call with Diana.
Oh, wow.
The memory gaps.
Yeah.
He struggled to even process what had happened. And he was so young.
He was just a boy. Childhood grief is it's a complicated thing. It manifests in different ways for everyone, Yeah. But that struggle to understand, to make sense of such a profound loss.
Right.
It's a common thread. Denial, seeking solace in routine, it's all part of that process.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for Harry,
yeah,
you can't escape the public aspect of it all.
Right.
It adds a whole other layer. He talks about seeing Diana's coffin draped in the flag.
Oh, wow.
The crowds of mourners. The world seemed to be grieving alongside him.
Right.
But he also expresses confusion about the public reaction.
Really?
Especially toward the Queen's initial response. It highlights this disconnect between private grief and public perception.
Yeah.
Especially for someone thrust into the spotlight at such a young age.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes you think about the nature of grief, right? How it's experienced when you're constantly in the public eye.
Right.
How do you reconcile your personal loss with the expectations of a nation? It's something Harry grapples with throughout the book.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Almost like that feeling follows him to Eton.
Right.
Being caught between two worlds, public and private personas. He found comfort in the routine at Eton.
Okay.
But still felt like an outsider.
Boarding school. I mean, talk about pressure, figuring out who you are, and then add in being Prince Harry at Eton, no less.
It's a lot.
It amplifies those insecurities, you know?
Totally. And he's open about the struggles, too.
Oh, yeah.
Not just the Prince stuff.
Right.
He talks about loving rugby.
Okay.
But struggling in some classes. Things we can all relate to, right?
For sure. And then he mentions experimenting with marijuana, cigarettes.
Yeah. Makes you wonder.
It does make you wonder.
Was that part of it?
Part of what?
Trying to cope with the pressure, the expectations.
It's a good question. Not unusual at Eton necessarily, the sources say.
Right.
But for Harry, you have to imagine that need to exert control.
Right.
Escape the scrutiny, maybe even just escape, period.
It's a side of the story we don't often hear.
Right.
And that desire for escape, for something different.
Yeah.
It seems to lead him to the military.
Okay.
He was fascinated by soldiers as a kid, but as he got older, it became about more than that.
More than what?
Finding a purpose.
Okay.
Meaning, but beyond royal life.
I see. So we have this interesting mix, purpose and escape all tangled up.
Right.
And the military being this departure point, in a way.
Right.
A chance to be on a level playing field. Face challenges that have nothing to do with being a prince.
His time in Afghanistan, though.
Yeah.
Talk about a world away, right?
Right.
He talks about the camaraderie there, the adrenaline, but also the brutal reality of it.
Yeah.
What he saw, what he did.
Right.
And he doesn't downplay that toll it took at all.
No, not at all. It's intense, reading about it.
Yeah.
The psychological impact of combat.
Right.
How it forces you to think differently, to function.
Yeah.
Dehumanizing the enemy to survive. And then coming back to civilian life after that.
Right.
Trying to make sense of it all.
It's a whole other battle, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
And then you add in the public life aspect. Having to carry all that while the world watches.
It makes you think about the long-term effects.
Absolutely.
Even years later.
Yeah.
And on top of that, he talks about the challenges of dating.
Oh, yeah.
With all eyes on him.
Right.
Never knowing. Yeah. Is it him they're interested in?
Right.
Or the prince part?
Exactly. It's clear. He wanted something real.
Authenticity.
Yes. A connection that went deeper than all that.
And then he meets Megan.
Right.
And from what he says,
yeah,
it was like this instant connection.
Like a spark.
Yeah, like a magnetic pull between them.
They were drawn to...
And their shared values.
Their passions. I think that's really interesting about their story.
It is.
How their differences, their backgrounds especially, become this strength.
It challenged those expectations, didn't it?
It really did. Like, this is what a royal relationship looks like. Right. And their love, it became this catalyst. Not just for them personally.
Right.
But for the monarchy itself.
But change like that.
It's tough.
It doesn't come easy, does it?
No, not at all. You see that institutional pushback.
The clash between their desire for something different
and
centuries of tradition.
Exactly. And the media scrutiny.
Relentless.
The intrusion, the racism towards Meghan.
It's a lot.
It really is. It speaks to this deep resistance. And let's be honest, prejudice still, even in institutions that should be beyond that.
That's a good point.
It makes you think, you know.
It does. But their decision to step back, to choose their own path,
powerful.
It really is. It shows the courage it takes to break free, to prioritize well-being.
To live by your values.
That's the message, isn't it?
It's a big one, for sure. It's a story that goes way beyond just Harry and Meghan.
Absolutely.
It's about authenticity, resilience, challenging the norm.
It makes you look at your own life, doesn't it?
It really does. Your own values, choices.
What will you take away from our deep dive in despair?